respectable launch off with the role in the film, a wonderfully generous opportunity that she never forgot. Barb was crazy about James Cagney, says Jam Redfield. She talked about how great he was to work with and said she studied hard to do just the right thing at just the right time, as she really wanted to please him. She also raved about his sister, Jean, who must have visited the set because Barb said she had some conversations with her and she thought she was a dynamite lady. Barbara didn't usually compliment too many other women, so Jean must have really impressed her. As for the film's star, Barbara had idolized James Cagney ever since she saw him in person at a war bond rally in Odessa in 1943. Then just 16 years old, she had gotten to meet him that afternoon and never dreamed that 6 years later she would be starring as his leading lady in a prestigious Hollywood film. Working with James Cagney was magical, Barbara later wrote. He gave me my big break. I would have done anything for him. For his part, Cagney's recollections of Barbara were cordial, but much less impassioned. He once made the comment that Barbara was an actress of impressive, if limited, skill, and in his 1976 autobiography, he discusses the film they co-starred in, yet never once mentions Barbara by name. Her alleged affair with his brother might have had something to do with that, said Virginia Mayo to Laura Wagner. I don't think Jimmy approved of that relationship, so it went nowhere. As a result of her successful appearance in Kiss Tomorrow Goodbye, Universal International Studios, which had unceremoniously dumped Barbara the previous year, sent word out that it wanted to borrow her from WB and Cagney Productions to co-star in a new picture with Donald O'Connor that would be produced by Robert Arthur and directed by Arthur Lubin. William Cagney had left the decision up to Barbara, who was naturally very skeptical of the offer, on whether she would do the film, so she scheduled a meeting with Lubin and Arthur at Universal. Bob Raines, UI's assistant head of casting, who had befriended Barbara during their publicity tours for Universal in 1949, met her for lunch that day at the studio's sunroom commissary prior to her meeting with the other executives. Raines got there before she did, and in his 2001 memoir, Beneath the Hollywood Tinsel, The Human Side of Hollywood Stars, he remembers Barbara's head-turning entrance. Suddenly, the noisy room became silent and motionless, he wrote. Standing in the doorway, magnificently dressed and groomed, was Barbara. I stood up to go over to her, but she saw me and headed my way before I could. Every eye in the room moved with her. Conversation only resumed when she sat down. During Barbara's lunch with Bob Raines, several studio executives allegedly stopped by their table to flirt with her. Raines felt that they were obviously trying to woo Barbara into doing the Donald O'Connor film, and that she, in turn, had played right along with them like she was interested in the offer. First to arrive was William Goetz, head of production at UI, who stopped by just to say hello on his way to the executive table. Next came Rufus Lehmeyer, head of talent at Universal, who gushed that Barbara never looked more beautiful, and added that he hoped she would soon be back working at the studio. Even Ed Moule, vice president of production, stopped by, as did Leo Spitz, chairman of the board, to congratulate Barbara on the sources she had found at Warner's. Barbara was friendly and charming to each of them, Bob Raines wrote in Beneath the Hollywood Tinsel, even to Bob Palmer, head of casting, who had told her she was being dropped from the studio and why. Raines was amazed by Barbara's graciousness in the presence of a group of men who had once been her adversaries, and he told her that he didn't know how she was able to be so friendly to all of them when they had orchestrated her firing from the studio just a few months earlier. Barbara just laughed and told them that he hadn't spent all those hundreds of hours in acting class at Universal like she had. Okay. As Barbara and Barb Raines proceeded with their lunch, it soon became clear to him that she never had any intentions to meet with Arthur Lupin and Bob Arthur regarding the O'Connor film. She had merely shown up to see if the people she had left behind at the studio were as phony as she had always believed them to be. And she had invited Raines, of whom she was very fond, so he could enjoy all these high-powered types practically groveling at her feet. Barbara hated phonies, said John Redfield, and she could always see right through them, too. She thought it was ridiculous to try to kiss up to people, and trust me, the only time she ever did it was to prove a point. On her way out of the Universal Commissary that day, Barbara used the telephone to tell Bob Arthur's secretary that she had a headache and that she was canceling her appointment. Her strategy to have the last laugh worked. In fact, too well, perhaps. Barbara never worked at Universal again. She walked away from the studio that day, leaving the proverbial bridge and perhaps even a few incensed executives burning behind her. Adding to Barbara's growing list of personal and professional victories during this time was WB's announcement that it was rewarding her for the success of Kiss Tomorrow Goodbye with a then unprecedented pay raise to $10,000 a week, the bulk of which was thought to come from William Cagney Productions.